They simply called her the miller's daughter. No name, no title, no dowry. Just a girl from the edge of the kingdom, in a house where the walls breathed sorrow and the floor creaked from damp. She knew the smell of rye dust. She knew how heavy the sacks were. She knew the silence of her father when he came home, too tired to speak. She didn't dream of palaces. She didn't want gold. All she ever longed for was peace. But one day, even that was sold. "My daughter," said her father, adjusting his greasy collar, "can spin straw into gold." He didn't say it out of cruelty, maybe out of fear, maybe out of pride, maybe just out of foolishness. But he said it, and the king heard him. The king turned slowly, as if he'd heard music. "Gold, you say?" His voice was soft as velvet, but his eyes burned like coins in fire. "Bring her to me," he ordered. And that very evening, her life shattered. She didn't walk. They led her. Down long corridors, where footsteps vanished under the vaulted ceiling, as if even time was afraid to breathe. They brought her into a hall, tall like a church. Inside, nothing but straw, piled high, hills and walls of it. It smelled of dust and heat and hopelessness. By morning, gold or death. The door slammed shut. The metal lock rang in her bones. She stood there, small and poor, in a dress made from an old tablecloth. She stared at the straw like it was the sea, and she couldn't swim. "I can't," she whispered to no one. "I don't know how. I'm not a witch." The straw said nothing. Her heart pounded like a hammer. Tears ran down her cheeks and hit the cold stone floor. Time passed. Then, a sound, faint, a creak, like someone opened a door. Then footsteps, light, quick, almost like dancing. She turned and saw him, a creature, small, covered in soot, like he'd crawled out of a chimney. His movements were sharp, like a puppet's, his eyes fast like a rat's. But in those eyes, something gleamed. Not cruelty, not pity, curiosity. "You called?" he giggled, tilting his head. She could barely breathe. "I don't know how. I don't know what to do. But I do," he grinned. "And everything in this world has a price." He stretched out his hand, dry as a root. "What will you give me?" she trembled, then removed her necklace, the only thing she had left from her mother. "That will do," he nodded, and got to work. By morning, the hall shimmered like a royal treasure chest. Where piles of dry straw had lain, now gold gleamed, in strands, in loops, in sparkling heaps. It seemed to breathe in the half-light, catching every flicker of the candles. The king entered and froze. "This—" He ran his fingers through the golden threads, as if afraid they might vanish. "This is a miracle." He walked up to her. She stood still, pale, arms hanging down, as if recovering from a fever. She couldn't feel her feet or her face, just a trembling deep inside from exhaustion and fear. But the king was pleased. "You will be my wife," he said, and she nodded. A year passed. The seasons changed like royal gowns. Autumn brought dances, winter, feathers and furs, spring, whispers of an air. And in summer, on the day the jasmine bloomed in the garden, the queen gave birth, a boy, strong, rosy, his little hands clinging to her skin. She laughed. She stared at him in wonder, like he was a miracle, a real one. Warm, alive, and everything that happened in that straw-filled room felt like a dream. Distant, faded, unimportant. But dreams, they come back, especially the ones that made a deal with you. That night, while the palace slept, while the torches barely flickered in the halls, a door creaked in her chamber. Softly, almost kindly, she turned, and her heart clenched. Him, just the same. Only now his shadow was longer, his gaze colder, as if he knew he'd find her like this, happy, forgetful. "I've come for what's mine," he said, voice calm. The queen pulled her child to her chest. "No, please." She could hardly breathe. "I'll give you anything. Just say it. Gold, land, castles?" He said nothing. "I'm the queen. I can give you a kingdom." He shook his head. "You gave your word." She let out a cry, fell to her knees, reached out like to an executioner. "Please, he's my son. He did nothing wrong. Then he said the words that would haunt her forever. What's alive is worth the most. He turned as if to leave, but at the door he paused. And maybe he heard her silent prayer, because he added, If you can tell me my name in 3 days, I'll leave the child. He didn't look back. He vanished into the shadows, as if he'd never been there at all, and she was left, alone, on the floor, clutching her shaking baby, with a name she didn't know, a name that now mattered more than all the blood in her veins. The queen hadn't slept for 3 nights. Her eyes were red. Her voice was gone. Everything around her felt like a nightmare with no way out. The whole palace was in a fever of searching. By her order, messengers, wise men, dream readers, and street magicians were sent to every corner of the kingdom. Find even a shadow of his name, she cried, clutching the mantle of yet another envoy. A sound, a clue, anything. It's a matter of life. Of my son's life. She tried names herself, hundreds, thousands. Old and new, male and female, from every tongue she knew. Each one she spoke aloud like a spell. Casper? No. Balthazar? Wrong. Jonah? No. Every time, the same cold answer. She began to lose hope. The 3rd day came. The sun was setting and silence pressed against the walls of her chamber. She sat on the floor beside the cradle, stroking her baby's hair for the 100th time. Then, footsteps, hurried, breathless. One of the messengers burst in before the guards could stop him. Your Majesty, he shouted, panting. I saw him, I heard him, you must know this. Speak, she cried, leaping to her feet. In the forest, far away past the fox's den, where the grass is black and the trees twist like in dreams, I wandered there, and suddenly, a fire. Small but alive. And around it danced a strange little man, tiny like a dwarf, and he was singing. Singing? What? She grabbed his hand. The messenger tried to recall the words, his voice rough and shaky. Tonight I bake, tomorrow I brew, and the next day I'll claim the child I'm due. And no one knows my clever plan, for my name is Rumpelstiltskin. The name hung in the air like a bolt of lightning. The queen froze, whispered it again. Rumpelstiltskin? The man nodded. He said it himself, while dancing. She pressed her hand to her lips. Her heart pounded like a church bell. Night fell. She sat by the fire, the baby in her arms. No fear now, no trembling, only clarity, the kind that comes before a battle. Then again, a creak. The door opened. He stepped inside, the same one, small, twisted, grinning like a shadow in human form. Well, he said, the 3rd day has come. Your final chance. Surprise me, Queen. She rose slowly, with grace she never had before. Not as a girl, not in that straw-filled room. Only now. I've thought long and hard, she said softly. I've tried hundreds of names. Maybe you're Hans, or Franz, or Elric, he smirked. No, maybe Abraham, or Mephisto, he nodded. It's touching how hard you fight. She took one step closer, her voice dropped, calm and steady. Or maybe your name is Rumpelstiltskin. The world seemed to stop. He froze. His face twisted. His eyes widened. Who told you that? He screamed, thrashing his arms. Who whispered it? Who dares to know? He spun, stomping so hard the stones trembled beneath him. It's mine. You weren't supposed to know. His voice climbed higher, sharper, until it was almost a shriek. And with one last stomp, the ground split open. He fell through, swallowed by the earth like a shadow at dawn. Some say he tore himself apart, from rage, from despair, from the horror of being named. A name, just a name, and all his power was gone. The queen walked to the cradle, sat down, held her child close. He was asleep, peaceful, sweet, and she wept. This time, from relief. We're used to thinking of Rumpelstiltskin as just a fairy tale, a little scary, yes, but still a story for children, something told by firelight, when the wind howls outside and shadows dance on the walls. But it's not that simple. In 1812, 2 German scholars, Jakob and Wilhelm Grimm, published their first book, children's and household tales. That's where the story first appeared, of a strange little man who spun gold and asked for a child. But the brothers Grimm didn't see themselves as writers. "We're not inventors," Jakob once said. "We're collectors." They didn't create stories, they listened. They traveled from village to village. They spoke with peasant women, widows, weavers, midwives, and herbalists. People who carried in their memory things never written in books. They listened and wrote it all down, carefully, precisely, with the passion of archaeologists. Only their tools weren't shovels, but words. And Jakob Grimm firmly believed many of these bedtime stories were far older than anyone realized. "They're not made up," he said. "They're remnants, fragments of the past, like bones of ancient beasts buried deep in the ground. We don't invent them, we uncover them." He believed fairy tales were humanity's memory, not in dates, but in images, not in facts, but in archetypes, patterns passed down from voice to voice, century after century, changing, shifting, but never dying. The tale of Rumpelstiltskin, with his secret name, his magic, and his terrible price, didn't come from nowhere. It runs too deep. It cuts too sharp. There's something ancient beneath it. What is it? The answer begins in the next chapter. Sometimes a fairy tale is older than stone, and a spoken word, older than writing itself. In 2016, a team of researchers from Durham University in the UK and the New University of Lisbon in Portugal set out to do something extraordinary. They tried to measure the age of fairy tales, not the age of books, not manuscripts, but the stories themselves. The plots passed from mother to daughter, from grandmother to grandson. Whispered at the bedside, sung by firelight, lost and found again. They approached it like science, using methods from evolutionary biology, the same used to build family trees of living species. Only instead of genes, they tracked motifs, plot lines, patterns, structure. They gathered thousands of versions of tales from all over the world, from different languages, different times. They compared, they mapped, and they began to reconstruct what once seemed impossible, the family tree of folklore. The result was stunning. The story of a magical helper with a secret name, the one at the heart of Rumpelstiltskin, turned out to be one of the oldest of all. Its roots go back some 4,000 years, long before the Trojan War, before the first Egyptian pyramids, before scrolls in cuneiform, before humans knew how to write anything down, when history still lived only in voice and memory. What connects all these versions? Across continents, across languages and cultures, always the same pattern, an impossible task, a mysterious helper, a terrible price, and a name that must not be spoken, but must be found. As if humanity keeps telling itself the same parable, wearing different masks, with different details, but always the same core. Why? What are we still trying to remember? Or, who are we afraid to forget? The answer may lie in the spinning itself, and in what's being spun, and from what. What could be simpler or older than thread? A ball of yarn, a spindle. A woman's hands spinning quietly by the fire. It feels like nothing special. A domestic craft, something humble. But if we listen to ancient myths, one thing becomes clear. Thread is not just fabric. It is the structure of reality itself. Across the world, spinning is sacred. In Sleeping Beauty, one prick of a spindle changes everything. A kingdom falls asleep, years vanish, one thread, and time collapses. In Rumpelstiltskin, the girl spins straw into golden thread. But what kind of thread is that? Why thread and not stone or fire or iron? Why is her fate tied to it? Because thread is more than material. It is a symbol. In ancient Greece, there were 3 goddesses feared even by the Olympians. The Moirai. Clotho spun the thread of life. Lachesis measured its length. And Atropos cut it. The moment death arrived. No mercy, no rules, just 3 figures at their wheels, weaving human fate from the first cry to the final breath. In the Norse world, it was the Norns, 3 women again, sitting at the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. They spun the past, the present, and what had yet to come. They didn't ask permission. They didn't serve men or gods. They wove reality itself. Even Odin was bound by their thread. In ancient India, the Vedas described the universe as cloth, a golden fabric stretched across layers of existence, woven from mantras and stars, held like a vast canopy over all things. Where the threads meet, fate is born. Where they tear, death follows. And now, this same thread returns, in a fairy tale. A poor girl, a dark room, piles of straw. Then he appears, the strange man with inhuman hands, and the straw becomes thread, becomes gold, becomes something that was once nothing, and now is everything. It's not a trick, it's a ritual, an ancient one, because to spin is to create, not just matter, but movement, story, reality, the secret fabric of the world we never see, but always walk on. That's why, in myths from Sumer to Scandinavia, spinning means power. Power over time, power over flesh, power over the soul. A thread is never just a thread. It is life. What is gold? A metal? A treasure? A measure of wealth? Yes, but not only. Since ancient times, gold has been more than a material thing. It was a symbol of something higher, untouchable, divine. It doesn't fade, it doesn't rust, it doesn't rot. Even in fire, it survives. That's why priests wore golden masks, why crowns gleamed inside temples, why idols weren't made of bronze, but gold. It shone like the sun, and in that shine, people saw a sign of eternity. Later came the Middle Ages and the alchemists. We laugh at them now, as if they just dreamed of turning lead into gold. But true alchemy wasn't about that. It wasn't about wealth. It was about transformation, not of metal, but of the soul. Lead was the flesh, the sin, the heaviness of the world. Gold was the spirit, the light, the awakening. The fire in the furnace was suffering. The kind that burns you down to build you back again. Alchemy was a form of prayer, a mystical path, through symbols, through metal, through endless trials to create gold. They were trying to recreate themselves. And now, in the fairy tale, a girl, a room, straw, the common, the dry, the worthless. Then he appears, and the straw turns into gold. Magic? Trickery? No, it's transformation, metamorphosis. The low becomes high, the earthly becomes celestial. What was useless becomes priceless. Why? Because she is afraid. Because she's willing to sacrifice. Because she's standing at the edge, between life and death. And in that moment, something breaks through, not logic, but power. That is the alchemy of the soul. When everything is lost, when nothing remains, that's when the chance comes to spin gold, not from straw, but from fear, pain, choice. That is when the passage opens, upward. And that is why this story isn't just fantasy. It is a formula, a hidden parable, about the gold that lives inside us, and that cannot be reached except through inner fire. Many thousands of years ago, deep in the Bronze Age, humankind first saw that fire could change the very nature of things. Someone threw ore into the flames and watched as something new was born. Liquid metal, bright, obedient, dangerous. Copper mixed with tin became bronze, a substance that didn't just cut wood and flesh, but changed the order of the world. The age of stone was over. The age of metal had begun. And with it came fear, because whoever held this power seemed more than human. The blacksmith was not a craftsman. He was a sorcerer. He worked with fire, listened to its breath, tamed its wildness. From the crude, he made sharp. From the filthy, he drew light. He created like a god, and like a god, he asked a price. Almost every ancient people believed man did not invent metal. It was given, offered, or forced upon us. In the book of Enoch, there are the Watchers, fallen angels who came from the sky. They taught humans how to forge, how to mine, how to make weapons. This knowledge became forbidden, and the world began to fall. The Sumerians had Kothar, god of smiths and builders. He made palaces for the gods, and his hands were wrapped in copper. The Egyptians had Ptah, a creator god who shaped the world through the fire of speech and metal. The Hebrews had Tubal-Cain, the first blacksmith, a maker of every tool in bronze and iron. A man, yet somehow beyond man. The Slavs had Svarog, god of fire, of the forge, the one who gave humanity the plow, the hammer, and the secret of flame. His son, Dazbog, carried the light forward. In all of these beings, one thing is the same. They do not live among us. They stand at the edge, in the mountains, beneath the earth, inside the cave, or in the heavens. They don't speak like we do. Their voices echo like wind, like fire, like the ringing of iron. They come without warning and vanish just as fast. They offer power, but demand a price. They are not good, not evil. They are other. In Germanic myths, there were dwarves who forged magical weapons. In Norse legend, the ones who made Thor's hammer. Among the Celts, gods who gave mankind iron and vanished into the mist. All these figures are one, the same archetype. The keeper of secret knowledge, the lord of fire, half god, half demon. A helper, but a terrifying one. So was Rumpelstiltskin. Small, strange, not quite man, not quite monster. He came by night, worked with his hands, turned nothing into gold, and asked not for power, not for treasure, but for something alive. He spoke in riddles. He vanished into the ground. He belonged to the same tribe as the gods' blacksmiths, the ones who knew the truth of fire, the ones whose gaze you must never meet, whose names must never be spoken. He is not just a fairy tale figure. He is the shadow of an ancient fear, a memory from that first moment when humans understood. Some knowledge is too dangerous. He doesn't want gold. He doesn't ask for power. He doesn't demand castles, titles, or crowns. After all, he can spin gold himself. He has no need for riches. And yet, he comes for the child. Why? The answer is not greed, not revenge. He says a line, short and terrifying. What is alive is worth more than all treasures. It's not a threat. It's a truth. He knows the price, the real one, not what the market says, but what we feel in our bones. And that's exactly what he demands. A child is not just flesh and blood. A child is continuation, a promise, a vision of the future. It is the one thing a person loves more than themselves, the one thing they would die for. That makes it the perfect sacrifice. Long ago, before marble temples, but long after fire lit the altars, humans searched for ways to speak to the unknown. They begged for rain, for victory, for relief from plague, for answers beyond reason. And the greater the request, the higher the cost. A firstborn child was the highest offering, pure, innocent, untouched. A sacrifice with no guilt, but with everything else: hope, flesh, future, pain. It wasn't cruelty for cruelty's sake. It was desperation, surrender, a bargain with something stronger. We know this story. In the Bible, Abraham and Isaac. God says, "Offer me your son." Abraham climbs the mountain with the boy. The blade is raised, and only at the last moment, a voice. Stop. The test is passed, but the meaning stays. The child's life is the limit, the final line. Beyond that line, there is only God. Archaeologists found tiny bones in Carthage. Inside clay urns, the scorched remains of infants. At the foot of ancient altars, they believed these were offerings to gods who demanded the most precious thing: Moloch, Baal. In all these stories, the same theme. When a human asks for the impossible, they must give the impossible. And if Rumpelstiltskin is truly an ancient being, a keeper of forgotten forces, then he is only asking what such beings have always asked. Not gold, not words, not promises, but what cannot be replaced, what cannot be shared. Life in its beginning. in its purity. A child. Rumpelstiltskin doesn't vanish by sword, not by spell, not by prayer, not by threat. He disappears because the queen says his name. Just a name. One word. And it's enough to break him. Why? Because in ancient tradition, a name is not just a label. It is essence. It is access. It is the key to being. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs had not one name, but 5. Formal, throne name, secret name. And the secret name was considered the true one. Only a few ever knew it. It was carved into temple walls, hidden inside tombs, guarded like the soul itself. If the name was forgotten, the soul was lost. The pharaoh didn't just die. He vanished from history, from the afterlife, from eternity, in Kabbalah and in Sufi mysticism as well. The names of God hold special power. They are not spoken aloud, because they are not just names. They are formulas, patterns of creation. To know one is to reach into the threads of the world itself. Whoever knows can influence. That's why in these traditions, the word is sacred. It doesn't fully belong to the speaker. It carries force, it creates. In an ancient text called the Testament of Solomon, the wise king receives a ring from heaven. With it, he calls demons, one by one. But to control them, he doesn't use steel. He doesn't shout. He doesn't cast spells. He asks, "What is your name?" And when the demon speaks it, Solomon takes power. Because to know the name is to know the truth, and to know the truth is to rule. He makes them carry stone, bring gold, build the temple. The name is a password, a code, a foundation. That's why in the fairy tale, the queen doesn't fight Rumpelstiltskin. She doesn't banish him. She names him. Your name is Rumpelstiltskin. And in that moment, everything collapses. His shape breaks. His power falls apart. As if the fabric of his being depends entirely on keeping that name hidden. As long as he's nameless, he rules. The moment he's named, he's exposed. It's one of the oldest myths. The dragon's weak spot is its name. The curse is undone when said in reverse. The spirit trapped in the bottle screams when you call it by its true name. Because within a name, there is knowledge, and within knowledge, there is power. Rumpelstiltskin doesn't die. He unravels, like an illusion, because his name is his core, and once it's revealed, he becomes nothing but a story, a sound, an echo, dust. Such is the power of the word. When the queen says his name, Rumpelstiltskin, she does more than just identify him. She wins, but it's not a victory by weapon. Not by trickery. It's a victory through knowledge. She doesn't attack, she reveals. She cuts through to his essence, like a scalpel to the heart. Like a blade into a secret. She calls him what he truly is, and that's what breaks him. She does the same thing Solomon did when he faced demons. "What is your name?" he asked. And once he heard it, he held power. This name is strange, awkward. It doesn't sound human. Rumpelstiltskin. It clicks, it jerks, it stumbles. Like music with no key. It's not soft on the ear, it's mechanical, like old gears, like a sound that doesn't belong in this world. In every version of the tale, the name sounds the same. In German, Rumpelstiltskin. In English, Rumpelstiltskin. In Icelandic, Czech, Norwegian, Slavic tongues, variations, but the same feeling. Alien, unearthly, like it wasn't spoken, but conjured. Ancient cultures believed that spirits, gods, and otherworldly beings didn't speak as humans do. They didn't form sentences. They sang. They whispered. They spoke in rhythm. Their voices sounded like wind in the trees, like rainfall, like a heartbeat echoing in a cave. Not logical, but powerful. That's why in the story, the name isn't revealed in a conversation, but in a song overheard by firelight. Tonight I bake, tomorrow I brew, and on the third day, the baby is due. It's more than a song. It's a formula, almost a mantra, a code. In such words, meaning doesn't matter, the sound does, as if the vibration itself shapes reality. That's how speech was imagined in the Old Testament and in Egyptian mysteries. Not as communication, but as creation. To speak is to create. And so, the girl speaks his name, and everything shatters, not because she shouted it in rage, but because she cracked the system, she said the code, she found the structure, she pressed the key that makes illusion vanish. A name is not just a sound, it is a program, a formula, a map of being. And if you know it, you gain access. Rumpelstiltskin disappears because his core becomes visible, like a vampire in sunlight, like a ghost called by name, like a fear that loses power the moment you understand how it works. And in that moment, she is no longer the victim. She is the one who knows, and that means she is free. From the very beginning, long before alphabets were born, humans felt it deep inside. The word is not just a sound, not just noise pushed from the throat. It holds power, real power, creative power. In the book of Genesis, one of the oldest and most influential texts in human history, God does not shape the world with hands. He doesn't paint it, build it, or carve it in stone. He speaks, "Let there be light," and there is light. One phrase, and the universe begins to breathe. Stars ignite, water flows, grass rises from dust, no tools, no labor, only the word. This is not a metaphor, it's not a poetic image, it's a cosmic law. The word as an act of creation. In ancient Egypt, the same force belonged to the god Ptah. He was not a warrior, not a smith, not a beast. He was a thinker, a mind. He created the universe through thought, embodied in the word. He spoke the names of things, and by naming them, he brought them into existence. To name a thing was to give it form. That's why in Egypt, it was dangerous to say the name of your enemy or to forget the name of the dead, because without it, the soul would be lost forever. In the Vedic tradition of India, one of the oldest spiritual legacies on earth, all that exists is born from sound, from vibration, from mantra. The world is a fabric woven from waves of sound, and those who know the right words can pull on those threads. They can shape the pattern, they can call, push away, heal, destroy, recreate. A mantra is not a prayer, it's a formula, a key slipped into the lock of reality, turning the entire system from within. Across all these ancient paths, divided by centuries, oceans, empires, echoes the same truth. The word comes first. The word is above action. The word is stronger than the sword. It's not just a sound, it's energy, intention, architecture. That's why words were once feared. That's why oaths weren't just promises, they were spells. To break your word was to break the world. And now, we return to the fairy tale. When the girl speaks the name, she does not merely say it. She rewrites the ending. She changes the shape of the story. She breaks the laws of fear and submission, and creates her own path. And she does it, not with a blade, not with cleverness, but with a word. At the moment she whispers, "Your name is Rumpelstiltskin," a new world is born. The old one shatters. Something ends, something begins. This is the power of the word, not as sound but as law. So who is he? A trickster? A demon? A forgotten god, cast out of the pantheon, but not out of memory? Or maybe the first blacksmith, the one who bent metal for the first time and made fire obey? The one who knew how to bring gold into this world, not from ore, but from fear and blood? Rumpelstiltskin is not just a character. He is a function. He appears when the impossible appears, when life is trapped, when a girl is locked in a room with no escape. And then, he comes. He doesn't save. He doesn't comfort. He offers a deal. You want the impossible? Then pay. He doesn't kill. He demands. He doesn't scream. He speaks in rhyme. He never explains why he wants the child. He simply says, "It's worth more than anything." And then he disappears, into the ground, into the shadow, into the dust. But before he vanishes, he leaves something behind. A word, a name, a whisper that lingers through the centuries. So who is he? A shape made of ancient fear, a vessel of forbidden knowledge, a leftover echo from the time before humans separated magic and craft, gods and strangers, metal and soul. He is a fragment of myth, someone we no longer call but still remember, because he's tied to something we don't fully understand, the deal, the price. The moment when the cost becomes more than we can measure, he spins, he demands, he disappears. And we keep telling his story. We whisper his name in fairy tales. We read it in children's books. And sometimes we shiver, as if something in us recognizes him, like a melody we forgot, like the smell of fire from a childhood long gone. And then comes the thought, what if this isn't just a story? What if it's a faded memory of those who once walked among us, who held fire, who spoke not in words, but in rhythm, who asked for a price in exchange for a miracle, and maybe they're still here, hiding in the shadows of stories, in twisted names, in words we no longer dare to speak aloud.